Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I am Kat, she, her, and this might be interesting.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and I got green on me.
Is that like having red on you?
That was the thought, yeah. It's like that, but I think it's like directly opposite on the color wheel or some shit like that. You would know better than me.
I don't know that it's because, like, you'd have, I mean, kind of, I guess, because you would have to mix the yellow and the blue, and that's the other.
I don't know.
Like,
I took like half a semester of art in high school.
Look, I got a wheel that shows me these things.
I just remember that green and purple are neutrals. They are neither warm nor cool, and that's the only thing I remember. Actually, and when we were doing some art project, I found a tower drawing on the internet and did that because it made me think of the Dark Tower. So it ties in.
It all comes back to the tower.
That was when I was first heavily reading the series, and it was just before the last book came out. So
welcome to episode 19.
Yay!
We made it 19 episodes, and we're almost to our year anniversary.
Woo!
Fucking amazing.
Yep.
We have not only made time for this, but we've stayed on it. We haven't stayed on top of our socials, but you know what? We keep making a podcast.
This is so impressive. I'm not shocked at this for Kat. I'm not entirely shocked that she has stuck with this. You've all listened to the hot mess that I am now. Oh my god, there's more now. There's more going on me now.
The green is from some whipped cream from a really awesome comic shop here in Reno.
Yeah, shout out Coffee and Comics. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. And, right now they have green whipped cream, and it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, not sorry. I just tried to get this off of me because I knew it was going to be distracting. So as we were talking about the hot mess that I am, trying to do anything involving me, thank you. Thank you for putting up with me and for making this run for 19 plus, 19 official episodes.
Yeah.
We are here.
And we appreciate all of you lobsters.
You too. Thank you also for being here.
We hope to continue to bring you somewhat entertaining content. Depends on what you enjoy about us. If you actually like the stuff we talk about, or if you just think we're a couple of idiots and that's amusing.
That can be a form of enjoyment. We'll take it.
I do mark off that this is also technically a comedy podcast.
It's not.
We make fun of a lot of shit, including ourselves.
It makes us laugh.
But it's also, you know what? This is a great opportunity to officially announce that we are finally launching our Patreon.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. Yay! If you've kind of poked around at the links, it's technically been up as I've been sort of trying to feel it out. But now it's going to have real content on it. Yay!
Yay!
We don't suck so much.
I mean, we suck pretty much an equal amount today as we did yesterday. But you can be an insider to that suckage if you want to throw a couple dollars our way every month.
Yeah.
You can find out more about how much we suck.
Yeah. So yeah, you can check out the link to that in our episode descriptions, and I think on our podcast website technically as well. But it should be findable under Many Constant Worlds. I do believe there is one person that isn't me who's followed us, at least followed us, because you can follow a content creator for free, so you can at least get the free updates without having to give money. And if you are that one person and you hear this, I'm sorry, there's been nothing to look at. And me changing images on things as I try to sort this out.
I'm not sorry. It was probably entertaining. You want to get in early before there's even a ground floor? You got to look at the bare bones of the construction happening. That's your own fault.
You will be able to be the person who can go, I knew them before they launched this. I saw it before. I know everything. So, you already know that our Kids on Bikes gameplay turned into more than what we expected. That first installment has already been released. We have more that will be coming. But speaking of Patreon, the character creation process I was actually going to throw on there. If you're curious about what went into creating Sassy and Sarah, subscribe to our Patreon.
Kat is not the salesperson here.
I'm not.
I will tell you right now, you want to hear it. Everybody wants to know about the character creation, but we're poor and we need money. If you want to keep having this podcast going, which apparently is not free.
No, podcasts are not free,
Yeah, we
guys.
found out the hard way that this costs money. We need people to be paying for some of these extras, so...
We lucked out and then, like, I already had a mic and Taryn already had a mic.
Yeah.
And, I had a computer. So
I did not have a computer that would run any of this, so...
So, we were able to cut out some costs, and you can get, like, used Stephen King books in a thrift store, but podcasts, like, require, like, a special feed, and if you're not super tech savvy, you might need, like, a hosting website to take care of that, and there are things that go into this that you don't think about when you go, we should make a podcast.
No, you don't, because everybody says it's, like, a easy way to make extra money.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a real easy way to spend extra money.
Oh, yeah, because we haven't made any money at all doing this. This is just a couple of people in our dining room.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes you can hear the really loud street we live.
Dogs.
And a couple dogs. Doing our best.
Which you will also see on the Patreon. More dog content.
So much more dog content. On to episode 19.
Yeah, enough awkward self-promotion.
We're millennials. We don't know how to self-promote.
No, we don't.
We don't want to bother you with us.
No. 19!
19! We wanted to do something special, not to mention we both needed a break from the heavy content that was it. And
oh, dear God.
In the actual world timeline right now, we have finished reading it. Those episodes just haven't come out. I'm gonna be transparent with you. Because we talk about, like, Taryn going to Switzerland, and here, Taryn is back from Switzerland.
That's why I have this great Swiss pen. Thank you, Katie.
How was Switzerland?
It was wonderful.
So bonus Patreon content, Taryn talking about Switzerland?
Yeah, I have so many pictures.
There we go. See, we're already building. We're building up what you can find on our Patreon.
Yeah, people love to look at other people's travel pictures. That's not a whole, like, almost tired, like, joke that people make about how terrible other people's travel pictures are. People cannot wait to see my travel pictures. You can tell them
about the apathetic airport guy.
Oh my God,
We're putting that behind a paywall.
Sorry, I've been silenced.
We needed a break from it, and we talk a lot of smack about the books. And frankly, I think it, of all of the books we've read to this point, has left probably one of the biggest marks on us. I don't know if that's a sign of a really great book or a really bad book or what. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means absolutely nothing.
So many people talk about how great it is. So I am wondering if we just need to digest it more.
Yeah, I can say I liked Misery so much more after I was done reading Misery.
I still don't like The Mist.
That's fair. But it's not quite like with Dune where I'm like, I'm not sure if I like Dune. I'm really just confused about Dune. I like it sometimes, and then sometimes I'm like, God, I hated that.
Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah, maybe thick books just take longer to settle.
Dune is a whole other discussion.
So we are going to do some infotainment. I am going to reiterate my theory of the id, the ego, and the superego stuff as applied to the Dark Tower. I want to talk a little bit about the building blocks that go into the Dark Tower and reflect on what we see throughout the books that we have read so far.
And I'm going to take notes.
So if you've gotten here and somehow missed, I think it was episode 12 where I originally brought up my theory with Roland, the Man in Black, and the Crimson King being the superego, the ego, and the id. Well, now you're going to get this. And legitimately, while I was writing this, I did feel like I was writing an essay for school again. Like, I'm about to drop some serious... In this episode, I will cover the Dark Tower, how the Dark Tower series represents Stephen King's psyche. And the tower is symbolic of his like mind palace, but probably not as
No,
good.
you don't get to use Mind Palace if you're not going to watch Sherlock with me. I'm going to strike it out every time you try to use that phrase, so I hope it's not in here a lot.
It's not. It's in it that once, but I was thinking of Fight Club.
Oh, see, I can't because I don't watch Fight Club.
It's because the first rule is we don't talk about it.
Yeah, but I talk about Sherlock a lot, so... That Mary and George show was great, but I still think Julianne Moore's character would have been better if it had been Helena Bonham Carter, I'm just saying.
I don't think she acts as much anymore.
Nicholas Galitzine was great, though.
So, there are books that are described as cornerstones to the Dark Tower. One of those being it! Yay! And given that this is the language we use around that entire concept, for me, lends itself to the fact that the tower is some sort of, like, structure to represent King's imagination or his brain, whatever, I don't know, non-touchable thing you want to call it, that we're trying to make, like, real. And so, of course, it would make sense to me that he would have to engage different parts of his psyche. My argument is that whether consciously or unconsciously, that Roland is the expression of King's superego, the Man in Black represents King's ego, and the Crimson King is King's id. These three things build out Freud's structural model of the psyche, and the simplest terms that I've heard these described in are that the id is instincts, so basically primitive, base urges. Fucking, eating, sleeping. The ego is reality, which is taking into consideration the wants of the other two. We'll come back to the ego as reality. And then the superego is the morality. So back to the ego as is reality, it's basically balancing what the superego thinks it needs to be doing, because morals are created by society and often developed at a young age. The id is something that we're basically born with, and I think, Taryn, you could probably speak to this better with your anthropology knowledge about like what people are kind of innately coming out the womb with.
There's arguments about that. Mm-hmm. So there are now we're gonna have to argue about nature versus nurture. But if we're talking about specifically what we come out of, like humans are strange because humans are not finished forming when we're born, because humans are big brain, right? We can't make it out of the birth canal actually formed the same way that other animals can. The reason I bring that up is because so much of we are such social animals that, like, the need for food, water, air, all of those things, I mean, they are instinctive, but there are so many arguments as to even those things being learned to an extent. But if you're talking about, like, what a newborn, like, the most newborn baby is born with, like, newborns, like, when you take a newborn baby out of the birth canal, supposedly a newborn baby can crawl up its mother to get to, like, a teat. They can't do it like, it's only for, like, a couple hours after it's born that it can do that.
But it knows it needs food.
Yeah. Unless something goes wrong, instinctively you start to breathe air once you're pulled out of the womb. And because you have the drive to get to, like, the milk, that would also be, like, a drive for water. I would also say that instinctively you are looking for, like, that social connection. Babies look to their caregivers because humans are born not finished. And, like, it's... Even other animals do that. There are other social animals that do that, but I
Yeah.
That's a hard question to answer, but those are, like, the most, like, instinctive things, as, like, your caregivers, food, air, are, like, the most like, those are the things that humans are kind of born the most for. So, I mean, you kind of covered it with fucking eating, sleeping, because fucking is the, like, social connection, I would argue.
Yeah. Well, and as you get older, the hormones dictate what you need to do.
Yeah. So I would say, like, social connection, eating, sleeping is just, like, rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and air, like, you can't. That is the thing you die the quickest without. What is it, like 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, something like that, like the 3-3-3 or
You would know
2-2-2
far better than I
or something.
would.
But that's like the rule of the things that, like, you cannot, like, you absolutely cannot survive without. Is those things, though. People, that's why I add the social bit, because people will also die of
Loneliness.
like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, like, there's studies with babies who have no, like, human connection, and it makes frightening fucking people. Well,
Homelander.
I was thinking, like, the like, Romanian, and I think it's Romanian orphanage. Like, I'm talking about real world
I
examples.
assumed you were
but,
talking
like,
about real people. I saw
Homelander. Yeah.
For Homelander.
Yeah, Homelander's actually, like, a real mild case. But yeah, it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
So those would be, like, the 4 things. Sorry.
Oh, no.
It's a more complicated answer than.
No, I think that's why this is a conversation.
But I think also if you ask a different, like, if you ask a different discipline that same question, you will get a different answer. So, oh my god. Like,
there's more green on them.
I just picked up the cup. It's on the lid. I'm very confused.
All I can think of is, it's like the Hulk won't stop coming.
That's not cool when I took a drink, dude.
I didn't realize you were taking a drink.
Why else would I pick up the cup?
I thought you already took the drink.
No, I picked up the cup and, like, moved with the straw, and I mean, that's pretty much what happened. I got hooked. Like, it's pretty good, though.
That's good. Morality is commonly defined by religion. One example being no sex before marriage, or in the case of Carrie's mother, not even within marriage is that okay. Things like this develop the superego. I will say I'm a little more excited to get to Carrie even now, because I wonder if her mom is going to be a good example of something like a superego getting real fucked. So basically the superego is developed when people are children. That idea is, I think it's like 3 to 5 years old is when they are developing the superego, and it's based largely upon the parent they identify with the most, which is why it's very commonly the same gendered parent. So if you have a little girl, very often they start to identify with their mother.
Yeah.
And they see the way that their mother behaves. And so they develop their superego, like, this is how a woman behaves. This is how I should behave. So when you have Carrie White, who sees her incredibly religious mother, what happens? We've watched the movies, but what actually happens in the book, I'm very interested to see, because obviously Carrie in the movies kind of starts to push back on that, as one would expect, because Carrie's going to school and her ego is taking care of her, saying, hey, your super ego over there is very fucked up. You cannot live the way your super ego wants you to live, because you developed this based on watching your mother, who legitimately thinks that your, like, her husband was not to have sex with her.
Or, and I might be jumping ahead here, or you're Roland and you grow up within this very strict, am I jumping the gun here?
You're fine. This is where I'm heading with this, okay. So you're right on track.
So you grow up within this extremely strict, within the gunslinger, like, ethos, I think would be the word. You grow up within this really strict culture, obviously identifying with Stephen Deshane, and then in walks this person who's supposed to be the balance between the two, and cuckolds the parent that you identify with and that you're kind of forming this identity around, which happens right at the age where they kind of say you're starting to like more pull away and individualize. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm way jumping ahead here.
No, you're but, like I said, this is the path we're taking.
Yeah.
I want it to be a conversation.
No, for sure. We can talk about it here in a minute, but I see this like, obviously he lionizes Stephen through the story, and Flag like reveals Stephen for who he is through what he does with Gabrielle Deshane. I feel like it forces Roland to have to start seeing, like, it pulls back the curtain on how it's not as black and white as that.
Exactly.
And what you will find as the story progresses is that more and more, like, Roland has to see that because it is just not that black and white. Which is interesting, because if you look at Eyes of the Dragon, it feels like that is the story there as well.
Yes.
Peter is just very, like, rigid in his thinking, whereas Thomas is constantly being shown his father. Like, Thomas already knows because he sees the worser side of his father.
Yeah.
And Randall Flagg, like, he even gives him, like, the Eyes of the Dragon to see, like, which is interesting, too, because, Roland, in that story, King Roland, like, kills a dragon, and then Thomas gets to look down on his father through the eyes of the, like, last big, like, murder that his father did. It was Roland's triumph, but not for the dragon was it a triumph.
Yeah.
And so it becomes this, like, again, this, like, thing of this is not a black and white thing.
Well, especially because Roland's triumph even resulted in Peter. Mm-hmm. So it's beautifully well thought out there. Or maybe not thought out, but just beautifully well constructed somehow.
And who would eventually, like, replace him.
Yeah. Okay. The id, however, is basic urges a person has. And it's what you come into this world, like, wanting and needing. And if you've played Baldur's Gate, the Dark Urge is a great example of that. And if you haven't played Baldur's Gate by now, who are you, where are you, and who are you to listen to this podcast if you're not playing Baldur's Gate? You're not our demographic. Hey, maybe they just can't afford it right now. It's a fucking expensive ass game.
No, that's fair.
But let me recommend to you, then, the guy who voices the Dark Urge is playing through the Dark Urge on Twitch. I think his username is Neely Roberts, but the actor's name is Neil Roberts. You can watch him be the Dark Urge.
Yeah, if you can listen to me talk, you can handle watching him. It's about the same level of just...
chaos.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's amazing. But either way, the Dark Urge, there is constantly something that the urges are telling that character to do. That is your id. Oh no, do some murder. Kill that bard. Sorry if you get a spoiler from this. I don't know how to help you. You know, we've talked about it before this episode, so... because I edited an episode with Baldur's Gate talk. So it's been out for a while. I'm not going to give you a ton of spoilers, but either way, it is in fact nothing but just urges. It doesn't care what society's rules are. It's all sex, drugs, rock and roll, fuck your rules. These are the two wolves inside of you, and frankly, neither one of them should be in control. Which is why we have the ego.
Yeah.
This is the actual expression of our personalities. We take what we learned as children and the proper way to be, and we filter the urges through that. We satisfy our basic instincts within the boundaries that will at least keep society from coming for us. It's maybe wanting to be in an altered state, but instead of getting cocaine, we just have a glass of wine.
Yeah, or if you can handle it, a blunt. Like, you can... I just wanted to throw that out there because some people can't have alcohol, some people can't have weed. Yeah. You can have one or the other, but you really shouldn't do cocaine, probably.
And hey, if you want, you could just spin around in a circle really fast.
Yeah, that too.
That will fuck you up a little bit.
Yeah.
Or hang your head off of, like, a couch or a bed.
Yeah. Approved by us ways to get high.
Sure. Don't do cocaine.
Yeah, I think we've made that stance pretty clear. And to be clear, neither of us have done cocaine.
No.
Maybe it's awesome. I don't know. Don't do it. It doesn't sound like a good idea.
No. So while Roland himself may not actually be a perfect paragon of good, the gunslingers, as Taryn mentioned,
yeah,
they do have a rule. They are the policing entity of Midworld, it seems like.
Yeah.
At least while they were a thing before where we actually come into the story, and it sounds like their time is past, and Roland's kind of the solo dude hanging out with this strong moral background that maybe he does or doesn't believe in.
Strong Christian overtones.
So this is the party king that he believes he needs to strive for, because, like, that's the end goal. Be this moral person, or at least try to be. You know, you want to be a good person, and good people follow a specific code of content. Kind of like, you know, the knights, and Taryn has mentioned already about, you know, King Arthur. Yeah. And you know what? They tend to use the code of chivalry. So, be a good person. Do good things. Earl is right. Kind of. He doesn't understand karma properly. It's a lot more complicated than that, but...
I wasn't gonna... He has a Western understanding of karma. I don't understand karma properly either, but I know enough to know that he has a Western understanding of karma.
To be fair, he did learn about karma from Carson Daly, so...
Who also probably doesn't... But you know what? Who am I to know if Carson Daly knows karma better than I do? I am as white as Carson Daly is. Neither of us should be talking about karma.
My Name is Earl is a great show, though.
My Name is Earl is a fucking amazing show. And I say that as someone who hasn't watched it nearly as, like... I've seen it because you have seen it the way that you have.
Yeah.
So
we also have then the Crimson King, who wants something darker and some destruction. He wants to plant his seed and let his children feast upon the world. At least that's the vibe I've been getting. Fuck all consequences. I want what I want when I want it.
But they both seem to really want the same thing overall, which is the tower.
Yeah.
Which the Man in Black really has no interest in. The Man in Black kind of just wants to do stuff. Like, he wants to be out in the world doing stuff, and also kind of wants to sow chaos, but he wants to sow like sustainable chaos. Whereas both Roland and the Crimson King are really kind of hyper-focused on controlling the tower, on reaching the tower and having the tower. And that is the only thing that they really, truly want.
Yeah, because everybody wants to be in control of the brain.
But not apparently the ego. The ego doesn't give a shit.
No, the ego's just having to work, okay?
Yeah.
It's got two psychos it has to deal with. Constantly. It's god damn it.
When did the Man in Black become our favorite character?
I would say when we started this book, he became mine.
Dear God. This is not how it's supposed to be.
That's because I'm not 19. I can't ride with Roland because I am too old for Roland's shit.
None of them are good. We have not reached the other characters, dude.
No, I know. And I get that.
It's fine.
This is just talking to the point that we have read.
No, and that's fair.
And that's what makes this also fun, because when I listen back to this in a year or so, when we're doing some other special episode, and following up on like, hey, how'd my theory pan out?
Yeah.
I can laugh at myself and be like, fuck.
No. And I do want to be very clear. It's not that I am not shitting on this as a theory. I am shitting on the idea of the Man in Black as a favorite on both of us.
Look,
for this.
I like a good villain. That's why I love Alistair.
That's fair.
That man is not a good man.
No, they're demons. It's hell. Yes. None of them are supposed to be good, really.
Angel's pretty good.
I love Lucifer. Angel was pretty good.
To be fair, Lucifer, he got cast out of heaven and shoved down there because he didn't agree with heaven. He doesn't even know about everything. That's why he doesn't understand.
Very few representations of Lucifer that I'm not on board with pretty fucking quick. So
you know what?
That was just one of the better ones. If you can't tell, we're talking about Has Been Hotel now, which is also great.
It is.
Have I already told you all to go watch Dead Boy Detectives?
I think you did, but that is in a thing that won't be out yet.
I'll say it again. Go watch Dead Boy Detectives. But anyways, sorry, that's really off topic. I just watched both of them around the same time, so...
We love media.
Yeah, I don't know if people picked that up. But, sorry, what were you saying about Has Been Hotel that I just fucking ran right over?
They also talk about the rules being made of gray.
Yeah.
So.
It's kind of the whole point.
Yeah. Shit's weird. That's how it is. So, in my argument, the Crimson King is the darkness that King finds within himself. That is the man who drank, did drugs, and had the very disturbed thoughts to create some of the monsters in his books. So lastly is the Man in Black, acting as an agent of the Crimson King, sowing chaos to the moral ideas that Roland and his gunslingers try to uphold, as we're moving forward. However, he understands his job is also sometimes to help Roland understand his place within the world. The Man in Black also has a plethora of world experience when you consider how many lives he's led, which makes him shaped by many realities to help curb the wants of his employer. Because obviously we have him in The Eyes of the Dragon. I know he shows up again in The Stand. And Roland hasn't really had that kind of experience out in the world. And if we do go under the theory that he is potentially Ralph White or Ralph Dugan, or even an influencer on those, he must have then touched the worlds that Carrie and Misery live in.
Yeah. I wonder, too, one of the things when I was going through the mental health stuff, because we did it with the, like, addiction stuff.
Yeah.
All together, you kind of have this, it's like a second face, or like it's like the face that you have on the outside where, like, it's almost like a more devious, like, fake it till you make it face. But it's, because it's what you're talking about, where, like, he's doing stuff for his, like, employer, or, like, his king, or, like, his patron.
Yeah.
But he fools so many people. Like, so many people believe the Man in Black is, like, a good dude, or is, like, look how long he did fine in the lane. Even though people kind of knew that he was shitty, he still did fine. And, like, Roland liked him. He kind of liked having him around the court and everything. I wonder if there's an element of, like, grappling with imposter syndrome with that. Of, like, it feels weird to, because it's one thing to look at this, because every writer puts a bit of themselves out on the page. Yeah. And so I think to this point, like, we're only talking about what Stephen King has put out publicly.
Yeah.
He was an addict. Here are my books. Here is, like, the fucked up things that I have written and put out publicly.
Yeah.
I have never read that he's talked about having any level of imposter syndrome or anything like that, and I'm not trying to...
We are not putting feelings on Stephen King.
I'm talking about the things that I experienced being in that position, which is why I'm trying to relate it to when I, like, went through, like, intensive therapy alongside, like, it was the same program as addiction, like, therapy. Because if I put myself in those shoes, what I see is that imposter syndrome feeling. And I know if it was me and I'm succeeding also, but I feel like I have all this shit. I can't imagine if I had all of the addiction shit and all of the other shit happening, and maybe mental health stuff, because really, in reality, people don't typically have those kind of addiction problems if you don't have mental health issues, or write that kind of shit with just, like, super healthy brains. I can't imagine the level of, like, imposter feelings I would have. But then having to go out and, like, do interviews and stuff, I don't feel like I would feel like Roland.
Yeah.
I feel like I would feel like the Man in Black.
Yeah.
Or as I'm saying, I feel a lot, but I just want to make it clear, because I don't want to assume.
Yeah.
I don't want to put out on somebody else. All I can do is put myself in those shoes.
Yeah.
That's how I would see it. I would idealize this other person. It's like, this is who I'm trying to be. This is who I think I'm supposed to be. This is what I actually feel like and am showing the world. And this is who I feel like I actually am, hiding back here that I don't want anybody to find.
Exactly. And that is the three sides there.
And because that's hard to understand. Like, when I'm hearing balancing the two, that feels like the true self, I guess.
Yeah.
Where it's the one that's balancing them.
Yeah. No, and that is exactly what the ego does, because that is what we put out.
Yeah.
That is how we interact with other people and with the world. We put those two to the side.
Yeah.
And it's like the angel and the devil, like imagery of one on each shoulder. And then whatever comes out of our mouth is actually the ego trying to just make it work.
Yeah.
So you know what? The man in black is pulling some heavy work. He's trying to, keep his employer happy, the Crimson King, but he's also trying to, not totally violate the ideas of his charge, Roland. It's complicated. So if we think of King's brain as the tower, or thoughts, all the books are all the different worlds building it. King's id, the Crimson King, wants to let the monsters out, wants to spread them further and further. And there are some books that I have heard Stephen King doesn't talk about, so maybe the Crimson King came a little too close to unleashing his madness when King found himself writing those books. Maybe he didn't like the darkness he put into those books. The darkness he found within himself or within society, facing things like the Atlanta child murders, where not only could someone or someone's harm children that way, but the policing entities who were meant to protect them failed so hard and were so dismissive of them again and again. Because I'm of the impression one of the ones he struggles to talk about is Pet Sematary.
Ooh, okay.
I've heard that he does not like to discuss that book. And I'm pretty sure I have ideas as to why, because I think that we have child death, the death of a main character's child, and then, revival. That's the whole thing of the Pet Cemetery. If you bury it there, it comes back.
Sometimes dead's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine that was a really disturbing thing to think about when you have 3 children. I don't know where he wrote Pet Sematary, if that was before or after it, but it's just difficult to deal with those things sometimes. These things are reasons for Roland, King's superego, his moral compass. More reason for him to go to the tower. He has to keep the monsters contained. Tower is made up of monsters, and they can't escape. They are not safe to escape, and there have already been escapees in the form of it, and potentially the creature, in desperation. So, but what if there are darker things inside of that tower that he has never released?
I'm waiting, because I have predictions moving forward.
Okay.
That have come up, but I'm waiting for the end. I will say with the tower, as far as, creatures, I think you're kind of onto something. I think that your idea that the Crimson King is, these base instincts makes a lot of sense. And then that the evil and the demons come from these base instincts, which is interesting when you point to, the Atlanta child murders and things, because if he's grappling with that, any of us that are grappling with that kind of evil and trying to understand why it would happen...
Yeah.
We can't, if you don't have that in you, I think that's why so many of us like true crime. And I think that so many of us grapple with trying to understand the evil that are serial killers and that are the actual evil that exists in the world that aren't spider clown monsters. And trying to understand where it comes from when you don't actually have it in you. Because writers can come up with...
crazy shit.
It's really easy to come up with really fucked up things. We talk a lot of smack about the shit that was in it. And about the scenes and shit. And make a lot of announcements. But why has he not been canceled? When in reality, writers come up with a lot of shit.
Yeah.
It is not trying to understand actual evil and understand where it comes from is so... I think that's why a lot of us who listen to true crime, I think that, I've heard other people talk about, and I think I've even talked about, people who have undergone, trauma and have PTSD listen to true crime, and it's oh, because your adrenaline doesn't go up the same way or whatever. I think it's also that there is a part of you that's trying to understand how people can inflict that kind of shit on other people.
Yeah.
And I wonder, even if you aren't somebody who's been through it, if you are somebody like, Stephen King is obviously not a stupid person.
No.
I have to wonder if you are somebody with half a brain cell, or because again, it's not somebody that we know. It's not somebody who knows how his brain works. But if he's looking at it and going like, I can't wrap, like, if he is at all curious, which I think as a writer who can write as much as he has and the kind of shit he has, you have to be.
Yeah.
You're trying to understand. Or maybe if you can write that kind of fucked up shit, you're scared that it lives inside of you and you want to make sure it doesn't. So what is the difference between what I come up with in my brain and what you do in real life?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I have to wonder if, especially when you're going on a bunch of interview shows and they're going, but where does it all come from? Where do you get your ideas? Where do you get your spooky ideas?
Yeah.
Especially if you're on a lot of drugs, as we talk about often. Like, if you're, like, doing, I don't know, LSD or acid or one of the ones that makes you see stuff.
Well, and when you can't remember what you did while you were on drugs.
Oh my god. Sorry, I took another drink of the green drink. Yeah, that would be awful. I can't even imagine. And this is so much speculation.
Yes.
It could be fine. It could be absolutely fine.
No, but I do think you make a solid point. Because I think that's also why there's certain things that will get people more interested in certain crimes over others. Because, like, I don't consume much true crime. I pretty much only consume it when you and I are listening to a podcast.
Yeah, when I force you.
But I was really into that submarine one years ago.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to understand how the fuck? How the fuck? But I'm not obsessively listening to true crime in general. There are just occasionally cases where I'm like, I need to understand what the fuck happened.
I just want to clarify, because I hate that there's probably more than one. But when we're referring to the submarine one, she is referring to the murder of the journalist Kim Ball.
Yeah.
I believe that's how her name is pronounced. And
I think so.
And I don't know that the dude's name has been publicized, and if it has, we don't say their names unless we absolutely have to. So fuck him, fuck him, dinky shitty ass submarine, fuck all of his hopes and dreams, and I am so sorry for Kimball and her family.
Yeah.
And all of that shit. She was amazing.
Yeah.
She was the coolest. Because if you are someone who doesn't do that shit, it doesn't make
it doesn't make sense.
It is so hard to understand it, and you want to.
Yes.
Like, I do think that a lot of us want to understand, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why? But, because you can't, it just doesn't compute.
No.
Because even when they tell you why, even when, like, these criminals say why, it's probably a lie. We never will. Because our brains don't work like that. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to but I just...
On that subject then, let's shift into talking about the morality within the Kingverse.
Yeah.
You know, you've talked about the Arthurian influence, and the knights, we know, upheld a code of chivalry. One code of chivalry was documented in the Song of Roland, which may or may not have influenced Browning's poem. There's some really standout similarities, but Browning said it came to him in like a dream. So he did not at least come out and say, yes, he was influenced by the Song of Roland. But I absolutely believe that King was, considering one of the books is the Song of Susanna. So
Yeah.
I struggle to believe that Roland and the horn and the song titling is just coincidence, because the Song of Roland does have a horn as well, which is why people thought Browning's poem was also related to the Song of Roland. And considering what you found when we were classing the It kids and Roland the cleric, I think a lot of this all kind of gets swept up, and it really impacted King's writing more than maybe we knew at first. But
what? We didn't do complete research? We're not that kind of podcast?
No.
If you haven't figured out that we just sit here and kind of bullshit our way through all this, you are listening to the wrong podcast. You are not in the, you need to leave the 30 people who listen to us, okay?
You know what? Subscribe to our Patreon, and then maybe we will have more time with which to do research. But as it is, I have to do the editing, so I can't pay an editor to do it, so I don't have the time to do the research.
Kat does everything, okay? Anne has a full-time job, and I die. That's my job. My job is death, usually, so...
So see, if you helped us out supporting the podcast, maybe we could afford some extras, and then we can do better research.
Yeah.
But anyways, the Song of Roland was written during William the Conqueror's time, and is about the betrayal of a Count Roland at the hand of Ganelon? Ganelon? I don't know how the
How's it pronounced? Or how's it spelled?
Ganelon.
Yeah, Ganelon, I think. Yeah, it could be wrong, but that's how it sounds to me.
Okay. Anywho, so Count Roland died in the Pyrenees at the hands of the Saracens?
Yep.
As a result of betrayal. Roland was a loyal, I guess knight. He was loyal to his liege, Lord Charlemagne. And his code of conduct basically was documented and is acknowledged as a code of chivalry at this point. And I believe now it's regarded as Charlemagne's code of chivalry. Much like a lot of religious dogma, they have a lot of similar core values between chivalric code and chivalric code. So I'm just using this one to kind of kick off the vibe of our morality check on the books that we have read. So, a reminder of the books that we have read to this point.
Dear God.
The Eyes of the Dragon, Misery, The Mist, most of it by the point that this episode is coming out, and most of The Gunslinger. A teasing amount of The Gunslinger.
Would you call it a shoot me amount of The Gunslinger?
Yeah, sure. We'll go with that. Charlemagne's Code of Chivalry. First item is to fear God and maintain his church. Next is to serve the liege lord in valor and faith.
That's harder because we mostly see through Roland's eyes, and Roland would have been the liege lord. They had to honor court as their teacher, but you'll notice they tend to, like the bit that we saw in The Gunslinger, the other kids defer to Roland because Roland's dad is Stephen. We see Roland defer to Stephen partially because Stephen is his father, but also because Stephen is the big lord, and we see that bit of the, party. Is it the Come Kamala that they're having? I think it is. The dance that they have where Martin dances with his mother, and it talks about the, breakdown of, the social structure that they have there, and his father is just above all of them. So all of the kids' dads are they're his quartet, but they're his court. They're Stephen's court. So they all owe allegiance to Stephen, and so all the kids owe allegiance to Roland. So that is harder to see, but that's we're still seeing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like we can see it then in The Eyes of the Dragon with Ben. Is that Peter's friend?
Yeah.
And Naomi, and how they kind of.
We also see it with the stable master, with Peter when he's very young, but he, orders him about the horse.
Yeah.
But Peter also offered, I have a feeling we're going to see it as we go down this list of chivalry, but I'm familiar with chivalric codes because I went to school for anthropology, but I switched from history.
No, I figured you'd have plenty to say about this. You probably know more about William the Conqueror, too, so I just know the name.
I do. Yeah, I do.
I just know when this epic poem was written.
Yeah.
I also don't know shit about Charlemagne.
Huh?
I also don't know shit about Charlemagne.
You'd like Charlemagne. Charlemagne would be... I'm actually surprised to hear that he's kind of your jam. But... and also might not have existed. That's a whole argument. There's a whole thing about whether or not Charlemagne was actually real. Because I was going to ask whether or not we know if this Roland guy exists. For Song of Roland, if we know that if this Roland dude who went and died in the Pyrenees was a real guy. But then you said that he was in Charlemagne's... that he did it for Charlemagne, and I know that there's... As far as I know, Charlemagne was real. But since I was in school, now there's argument about that, so I don't know.
So the next one is to protect the weak and defenseless.
Yeah, we see that with the horse. We see it... Roland does it But Roland breaks that, too.
He does break that. Yeah. I was thinking about that. To give succor to widows and orphans. To refrain from the wanton giving of offense. To live by honor and for glory. To despise pecuniary reward. To fight for the welfare of all. To obey those placed in authority. To guard the honor of fellow knights. To eschew unfairness, meanness, and deceit. To keep faith. At all times to speak the truth. To persevere to the end in any enterprise begun. To respect the honor of women. Never refuse a challenge from an equal. Never to turn the back upon a foe.
Yes, so Peter keeps this list. I think that we can argue really clearly that Peter keeps this list.
I could agree with that, yes.
He doesn't hit every single point on this list. Like, we don't see him with widows and orphans. We don't see every single point. But Peter keeps this list. Roland most certainly does not.
No. No, he does not. I don't think he can hit all these points.
But we almost see, King almost goes out of his way to show us Roland failing these points. That's going to be interesting, and I think that we should hang on to this as we move forward.
Yeah. And we can also read the Song of Roland. Like, I found it on a website, so we can...
I think we should at some point. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Okay, so Peter, as the dragon, keeps this list. Thomas, obviously, not.
But he kind of learns to.
Yeah.
And once he learns to, things go better for him. Peter keeps this list and he's rewarded.
Yeah.
Roland does not, and we will see where Roland ends up for that. And everybody who goes with him, because they're expecting him to.
Yeah.
Because he has this gunslinger moniker. Because he is a knight or a gunslinger, you're expecting him to hit these points. But he has one goal, and that goal is the tower, and he will fucking sacrifice everything to get there.
Yeah.
Including you.
Bitches, watch out. So, Paul in Misery. I know you didn't read that one.
Yeah.
But I would say Paul definitely does not hold this list either.
No.
Paul is definitely not chivalric. Not even close. The Mist. David? Was that the character's name?
Remember.
The guy from The Mist. No.
No.
Not at all.
But Ollie.
Ollie. Oh, God, yes, Ollie.
Yeah. He dies, but he keeps.
He does. I would agree with that.
You know what, though? We don't see enough. We don't know if Ollie was a creep.
No,
we don't know if he was a creep to women.
What was presented, though, I mean, what we saw of Ollie, he seems like he did, because I would also argue Mrs. Repson very much seemed like she was keeping a lot of this. I do think that there were some wiggle room, but then, especially with the Mist, it's interesting because we have Mrs. Carmody, who is the very religious person, and she was ready to sacrifice a child.
Yeah.
I think Bill tries, but Bill is a child, so there's an argument that it's still developing. As
an adult, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really see him around kids all that much.
Except for the movie.
I wasn't going there.
Stay away.
Get your parents to kick you out. You're like 7, make them do things.
I'm not crazy at all.
Poor James McAvoy.
Thank you, James McAvoy, for that scene. It still makes us laugh.
You're so underrated, James McAvoy.
You really are. I feel like there is an attempt to adhere to this when it comes to the IT group.
Yeah.
Particularly as children. I would argue that as adults, they've definitely lost it, but the ideas that we find important as children, we eventually learn cannot exist in the real world. So that's not horribly surprising that as adults, they maybe aren't able to uphold them quite the same as they did way back when.
I will say, though, because very often we're seeing these characters that don't really hold, but they have a moral compass, but don't always stick to it completely for what I would argue is often like the greater good, juxtaposed against these heavily religious characters that fucking every single line of every word and every letter has to be stuck to constantly, to the point that they will sacrifice children. So I wonder if there's an element of nobody can do this 100% of the time, because how do you, like, what happens if a widow is threatening a child?
Orphan child.
Yes, exactly. How do you rectify that? There isn't, like, you have to choose at that point.
Yeah.
And you have to choose, like, which is the greater good. Roland is heading for the tower, and he's doing that no matter what. But if I remember right, there is an element of that is all of the universes will collapse in on themselves if you do not strengthen and uphold this thing.
Yeah.
Like, you have to keep this thing up and going. Roland doesn't super care. He's like, no, I just kind of want to see it. But it's great that I'll be able to save all this shit while doing this. But I could also be misremembering because I didn't care. I was a teenager and I only cared about Roland's part of the story. And I wasn't following the rest super close. How much of it is that nobody can do all of this all of the time and there is no perfect person.
Yeah.
And when you are trying to be perfect, more people get hurt and you become a weird, gross fanatic.
No, I think that's fair, because even thinking of the few, like, Arthurian knight stories that I've read or heard, they generally have the knight exercising one of the points, maybe two.
Yeah.
They are never trying to show, look at them following the entire chivalric code, because I remember the Green Knight story. And if I remember correctly, like, the dude does break the code sometimes, but it's because his story is to make a point of a different part of the code.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously the stories of Lancelot romancing the queen, Arthur's wife, is that violating your allegiancy to your lord?
And yes, it is 100%. But I will say that with Lancelot, that is a whole other chivalric code.
Yes.
Because that was highlighting the ideals of courtly love.
Yes.
So that's a whole other
No, it
thing,
is. But that's my point, is like on what you're saying of just like no one person can do all of the things.
Yeah.
I think that has been like exemplified by these stories of the Arthurian knights, where no one of them actually could adhere to the entire code.
Yeah.
They all kind of they picked one that they really were like, this is my thing.
Yeah.
And then they went and did their thing.
Yeah. And Roland very much he is on a quest. He is on, it's a very, like, I think I've made the joke about, like, the Holy Grail, like Monty Python and the Holy Grail before. Like, he is on a quest, and he is, like, that overrides everything else, which is one of these points.
To persevere to the end of any enterprise begun.
Yes. And he started this, and he is gonna fucking finish it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that just overrides, because the way that this list is written out, each of these points is equal, but that's not how this code would have been. Like, some of these would have been much more important than other ones.
Yeah.
And there would have been an idea of, like, which thing, they would have known, like we probably know, like, which one was more important and which thing, like, do you save the child or do you save the widow? Like, even now, we kind of innately know, like, well, the child probably gets saved over the widow. Like, we know which thing morally that you do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's like something that you say pretty often about, like, that is your value. That is your core value. This is the thing that I believe is right of all the things here. That's the one I want to.
Yeah, shout out my therapist.
That's the thing I want to bring into this energy, into this world right here. That's what I want people to walk away and remember that I upheld.
Yeah.
Is that thing.
Well, and that's what I want to know, that I, like, that's the most important part of that, is it's the thing that I need to know that I did. Yeah. Because it's the thing, like, I'm going to be okay with myself, like, knowing that I did. And clearly, Roland's thing is I need to know that I finished my shit, like, and that I, like, I think that we will see as we move forward, he needs to know that he served his liege lord, I think. He just needs to know that he has done right by whoever is his quest giver at the time.
Yeah.
Because Roland should never have been a leader. Great follower. Horrible leader.
Sometimes that's how it goes.
It is. You can't have leaders without followers. I'm not talking shit. He was never really meant to be a leader of people. That's a whole conversation for another day about people who are born into power, who shouldn't be, and democracy in Gilead, and how we should have it. Democracy for fictional communities. Have we come to kind of the end of your...
Yeah, that is all that I kind of brought to the table here.
So I have a couple predictions then moving forward as far as what you might see.
Okay.
I think that to this point, because we've mostly been reading older books, we haven't read anything coming into the 90s.
No.
We haven't read anything kind of post... we make a lot of jokes about drugs, and we haven't really read a whole lot of, like, Clean King, which is a weird... Don't mean clean content, but... As we move into more gunslinger books, as we move into more books in general, obviously we have some older ones still to get through, but moving into more gunslinger books, I think that we're going to see a shift. Like, I think that we will keep Roland in the position of superego, kind of. And I definitely think the Crimson King stays where he is. But I think as far as the Man in Black's job... and what he represents, that is going to change.
Okay.
And I think Eddie Dean is going to step into that position.
You mean the guy who's named after Stephen King?
Yeah.
Stephen King's middle name is Edwin, guys.
Watch Dead Boy Detectives if we're going to talk about Edwin. But anyways, yeah. So as we've talked about before, Eddie Dean is... the whole point of him, like, it comes up that he's a heroin addict who's now recovering as he's in Midworld. He's very funny and optimistic. He gets compared by Roland to Cuthbert a lot. And in fact, later in the books, Roland will completely, like, basically he looks at them as his Katat Reborn, with Eddie in the position of Cuthbert, who he was the closest to. Like, that's why we saw Cuthbert in The Gunslinger. It could be all of them together who become that position as well. It could be the entire Katat, because they're meant to be this, like, balancing force, and Roland learns so many things from them. And Susanna is probably arguably the more important character, who will stay with him the longest as he makes it to the tower. Oh, it might actually be Oi who stays with him the longest, but sometimes I forget that Oi is really a part of it, because he's like a talking raccoon. I feel like it's Eddie Dean.
Okay.
Susanna becomes this, like, very much balancing thing. Susanna has her own issues. And it's kind of her own character. But Eddie is very much like the conscience of the group.
Yeah.
And Jake is a child, and Jake very much is kind of like the new Roland. Because he's been through so much shit.
Jake is Jesus.
Jake has been resurrected more times than Jesus, and he has to rectify like 4 timelines in his head. I feel really bad for Jake. He goes through so much shit.
He is JC. He is JC. He is Jesus.
He might be. Eddie is like just a better version. If it was me going through therapy and I've made this like dark persona that's like, look at me, I'm fucking fooling everybody. Absolutely, as I was like recovering and getting better, I would want to make a brighter, like, happier, like, you don't leave everything behind. And that's why I think the fact that Eddie is also in recovery and has the past that he has is really important. But he's also just like, come on, guys, like he's just, sorry, I'm like bouncing around as I'm like doing Eddie and you can't see it, but like he's just very, he's fun, like he's just, that's how I remember it. Maybe he'll suck, I don't fucking remember, but I remember him as great. I remember it being the best part. I hate that we're almost a year in and we're still not to Eddie. Like, it's the worst. You make, like, that's who the new front that you would want to make to balance these two sides. Because why would you want to leave it the Man in Black? But that's also who I think will be the new favorite, because it shouldn't be, like, liking villains or not, it just shouldn't be, like...
Look, right now, the Man in Black has been the most real.
It's Matthew McConaughey, I won't allow it! Like,
I don't even like Matthew McConaughey.
I do like Matthew McConaughey, okay? Like, I'm allowed to like the Man in Black and Matthew McConaughey. You are not. Like, I can like him ironically. I can like, this is the kind of weird shit that is expected from me. You're better than this.
I'm not, though.
The lack of Eddie was the worst part of the 2017 Dark Tower movie. 100%. I'm done.
Okay, you gotta tell them about the other worlds, though.
Oh, yeah, you can find them. They're out there. There's other ones.
Obviously.
There's a bunch of them. One of them's Midworld. Go find them. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Check out our Patreon.
Yeah, it's new.
That's a world.
Yeah.
Bye.
You can email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram or TikTok, and hey, while you're there, maybe give us a follow. Love you, lobsters.